Thank you guys. Recently we hit 1,000 subscribers here on the channel, and I know already we've passed 1,100. Earlier in October when I started my Halloween tank reviews, we did like a 15 review marathon, and the goal was to get to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. And we got quite a lot from that month alone. And then over the next month and a half, we achieved that goal and then some. So I seriously thank you guys for getting me there. And I recognize that right now is kind of a dull moment in the game for the aspects of overpowered vehicles being released and now gambling. But I still have to thank you guys for 1,000 subscribers. And so I thought I might as well tell you guys some more about myself and how we got here in the first place. And so today we'll go over my whole journey with World of Tanks console. And funny enough, it actually starts all the way back in Halo Reach. Now trust me, this is relevant to the story because this is where I got my name from, Just a Cone. Those of you who watch the streams, you might know someone in the chat, or someone we refer to as Master Chief. And he's a long-term friend of mine who I met back in Halo Reach. We were playing an invasion match, and my name at the time was Captain Keys 83. If you're Halo fans out there, you know who that is. And someone named Master Chief X32 was asking in game chat for a Warthog driver, so I, Captain Keys, drove Master Chief around in a Warthog. And because of that moment, because of game chat, and because of Halo Reach, I friended this guy. And the next day, we started up a Halo Reach clan. But that clan didn't last very long, as not even a week later, we were absorbed, basically, into this bigger clan called Legion. And it was run by this guy named Maverick. Now, what happened in Legion is irrelevant to the story, but the reason I bring this up is because after Halo Reach kind of fell off, or the Xbox One came out really, was what killed it for us, because a lot of the Legion clan members went over to the Xbox One, and we were kind of left behind. But at that point, right, we had already kind of broken down the clan, just become a group of friends, and it wasn't really about the Halo Reach clan anymore, it was about hanging out with the dudes. And so, as a group of friends, Maverick had an idea to all name ourselves with a distinguishing tag in our names. And so I went from Captain Keys 83 to I'm a Cone 456, and the 456 was our tag. And the reason I was I'm a Cone was because once we dropped the clan, my in-game customization for my Spartan in Halo Reach, I chose the Cone emblem. And my favorite color is orange, so I made myself orange, and it felt fitting, right? Cones are orange. It's as simple as that. That's where the name came from, was the Cone being an emblem in Halo Reach. And so when we dropped the clan and I customized myself, I put a Cone emblem on and made myself orange and named myself I'm a Cone 456. And a little while later, when things kind of, you know, usually as they do, fall apart, but not in a negative way, just, you know, Maverick had a kid and really stopped playing often, and it became just a different group of people. And at some point, I dropped the tag for the 456, and thus became I'm just a Cone. And I felt the just was necessary because I was no longer part of something. And so that's where the name came from, Halo Reach. But Maverick is still relevant to the story because he's actually the one that introduced me to World of Tanks console in the first place. You know, World of Tanks is a free-to-play game, right? And back then, there were very little free-to-play games. So, around the same time, like, Warface was coming out as beta on the 360, you know, the beta for the World of Tanks came out. I didn't play the beta, but when it launched, I do remember Maverick saying to all of us, hey, there's this new free-to-play game that's coming from PC. Why don't we try it out? It's free to play. So, because of that, we all tried it out. And I vividly remember my first few sessions with them in our tier 1s on Mines and Province. And when we got to tier 2, and I remember being confused at how the tech tree worked because I was a new player and I wasn't experienced with it, of course. And I thought you were just upgrading your tier 1 and just mounting different guns and turrets and stuff on it, and you upgraded this thing all the way. I didn't realize you had to buy the new vehicles, so I made stupid mistakes where I would research like the M2 Lite or whatever, and then I kept playing the T1 Cunningham asking like, where's my upgrade? What happened? So stupid things like that, right? We were just not knowledgeable yet. But getting into tier 2, my friends playing the artillery and really liking that, not knowing how toxic it could become and is. And so just, we had a lot of fun with it. But most of them didn't really stick with it. But I did. And it's because I found it super interesting. I'm not a tank nut. I don't really care for tanks IRL. The game has sort of made me enjoy the history of tanks, and I can listen to tank talk, but I didn't start the game, of course, because of tanks. I started it because it was free to play and my friends wanted to play it. And I stuck with it because the gameplay spoke to me. I loved how every tank was unique, and it was up to your tank's statistics to get you to win battles and the way you would play it, and it was like, you know, chess and whatnot. Position play, class-based rock, paper, scissors dynamics, right? And I really enjoyed it because I didn't think I was going to be bad at it just because I couldn't handle high sensitivities, right? You know, you go and play Call of Duty and you get pooped on by people who snap you when they're looking away from you and you start shooting at them and all of a sudden they turn 180. And it's this sensitivity stuff and all these things that you have to work towards being good with to get an advantage from. Whereas, and it's all about mechanical skill and abuse of movement tech. Whereas World of Tanks spoke to me because it was all about game knowledge. You weren't abusing movement tech, you weren't abusing anything. You were working within the parameters of the game and outthinking and outsmarting and outbrawling your opponents. And that is what kept me playing World of Tanks. And so that's what kept me really playing the game, was my want to learn and be better and learn how the game really functions and works, and then game knowledge ultimately winning over reactionary speeds and high sensitivity gameplay. And I would play in bursts here and there. I would pick up the game again and work towards something. Of course, I didn't have premium time, and then I would drop. There were times when I first got my first job that I would spend paychecks on the game because I could, you know. I was in high school and I was like, oh, I got money to spend. They put out an M6 A2E1, whatever it's called, the M6 Mutant, right? Let me buy that. Oh, they put out a T50-2, let me buy that. And there were a couple weeks where when I came back and started playing in this burst that I bought every vehicle that came out, and then I realized, man, they put out a lot of premiums. I should not continue to buy every premium that comes out, and so I kind of stopped. But it took me so long to get my first tier 10 that it was actually when the Chisel contract came out that I got my first tier 10. And at this point, it's been years, right? It's been like 6 years or something like that since I've been playing when it launched on the 360. And so I got my first tier 10 on the Xbox One, and that was the T110E5. It took me years to grind out one tech tree line. But that's because the way I played it too was about having multiple lines at once. I even had a list of all the tanks that I wanted that included any sort of tier. And I wasn't planning on getting every tank in the game at all because of how long it was taking me. So I had multiple lines going at once. And so after I got the E5 while working on the Chisel contract, because mind you, the Chisel contract was American and British mediums and heavies only, I started to really pick up momentum. My first ever game in the E5 too, I even remember it being Airfield, and it being a 6,000 plus damage game for my first ever tier 10 game, and I was ecstatic with myself because of how well I played. And because of the Chisel contract's requirements, I ended up getting the M48 Patton, the Centurion Action X, the Chieftain Mark 6, the Super Conqueror, and the FV215B, and then the Chisel. So after getting my first tier 10 after 6 years, I ended up getting a bunch of them all at once. And that's when I decided, you know what, instead of just going for specific tanks, eventually I'm going to grind out this entire game. And so that's what I did. And at this point, I'm playing with different people than when I started back on the 360. And in game chat, yet again, game chat comes back into the story here. Game chat from Halo Reach got me to where I am, and game chat in World of Tanks console got me to where I am because I met someone named Awesome Darren in game chat. And you might know him because he's still around. His name is R&R Kodzak on Twitch. But he used to be Awesome Darren. And he was talking in game chat and he was streaming. And streaming was something that I had always wanted to do. At this point in time, I had already bought a PC. I had already bought a capture card. But I hadn't set up anything. I hadn't really worked on it. And I was nervous about it. But hearing Awesome Darren in game chat talk through his chat, and then I talked and sort of had fun with them, I decided this is something I want to do as well. And it was shortly after I graduated high school in 2019 that with Awesome Darren and his friends that he had and I became friends with, like Toon Steve, I started my Twitch channel, Just a Cone. And my first stream was on September 19th, 2019. And over the course of time, we would start streaming more and more often. It took a while for me to want to continue to stream because if you're starting out, it is a bit disheartening to not really get any momentum. And one of your first goals on Twitch is to get affiliated. And so what do you need to do for that? You need to get 50 followers and have an average viewer count of 3, as well as having streamed a certain number of times within the month. And so that was our first goal. And we achieved that in December of 2019. So fairly quickly, if you ask me, but it really isn't that big of a requirement to be affiliated. Affiliation and partnership on Twitch are two different things, two different beasts, and partnership is definitely something that is harder to achieve, and we still haven't achieved it ourselves, of course. But on our way to affiliate, we even met some other guys who were trying to get affiliate as well, and our great friend Cryptic Zoro, whose name was HD Zoroark at the time, put a little race together to see who would get there first. And honestly, those days were very interesting, looking back on them. You have some people who have stuck around since day one. You have some people who haven't. And it was just a very interesting time looking back on it. I remember too when getting affiliated that my first founder kept bugging me, where's your first emote? And so we have I just got a picture of a traffic cone and made that my first emote because of course it's fitting, right? We still have that emote to this day called the first cone, and now it's a follower emote. But those were some really interesting times. 5 years ago now. It's crazy that it's been so long, and there's so many stories I can tell too from then to now. I'm gonna just try and do the most basic timeline of events in the last 5 years. So we got affiliated, we're hanging out with Toon Steve and Zoro, and we're just trying to create a community and grow the channel, you know? But if you remember 5 years ago, that is when the pandemic happened. And because I had just graduated high school, my parents wanted to move. They had been waiting until we graduated. We're the last of the kids, me and my twin. And so once we graduated, they were like, all right, we're moving north. We're moving away from here. And we sold our house in March of 2020. So I had just been streaming for a while. And now I have to pick up and move places. And that was an interesting time because, of course, the pandemic started. And so we had a house ready for rental up where we wanted to live for 3 months. We were going to rent it for 3 months so that we could look around and buy a house in the same area that we were renting from. But what ended up happening was kind of sad, and it still pisses me off to this day, these people. But when we showed up, they got really mad at us because we were from a county where it was really bad. We were from Broward County in Florida. And they got really upset that there was quote-unquote kids, even though it was disclosed that we were a family going to rent. And so they they closed the deal. They dropped on us, and we didn't have any place to rent. And these people owned like 80% of the rental homes in this area, and the other rental homes owned by other people were already being rented out. So what did we do? Well, we stayed at a hotel that we were friends with the owner with, even though hotels weren't open. He let us stay at one for the night. And then we went back down south so that my father could continue to work for a month while we bought a house unseen and stayed in not a motel, but one of those places where people who constantly travel for work get to stay in, like one of those places. And so basically we were homeless for an entire month. And I didn't get to stream, of course. Being away from stream for quite a while will set you back. And once we bought the house and once we moved in, it still took a while to set things up. We had a lot to change. We had floors to put in. We had carpet to remove and floors to put in there. And it took a while for us to set up the house as well the way we'd like it. So ultimately it was like a month and 2 weeks, so a month and a half that I had in stream. So when I came back after having 6 months of progress, it kind of felt like a soft restart. But I didn't care. I came back and I wanted to do more, and I wanted to have a name of my own. So at some point, I was in Toon Steve's clan called LO, and I had moved to another clan that you guys might know called the Nerds. And then after that, I decided I wanted my own name. And it's something I had always wanted even before joining LO. I always wanted the tag Cone. And thankfully, after all these years, 7 years of the game at this point, I could still get the tag. And so I started the Cone Family Mafia. Because at some point, I decided that we were a mafia. And the reason for that was our friend Dar, I am Dar, you guys might know him as well. He has song requests in his stream, and I would constantly request Don Johnson's Heartbeat. And every time it came on, he would always go, who the hell is requesting Don Johnson? Because, you know, he's mostly known as an actor, not as a singer. But he made music back in the 80s. And because of GTA 5, I loved this song, Heartbeat. And so I would constantly request it. And he would always point it out and find it funny. And I ended up, because of the word Don, meaning, you know, the head of a family, right? Or head of a mafia. And his name being Don, it just clicked that at some point he was the Don of the family. And he still is. I'm merely the underboss of the Cone Family Mafia. And so that's where that came from. So that's what the clan name is after. And of course, that's why the cone in my logo is wearing a suit, because he's a mafia man. We're made cones, you know, not made men, made cones. Everyone's an equal, everyone's a cone here, right? So that's basically the Twitch side of things, because the rest of the story from there is that I've continued to stream weekly since then. I've taken breaks, of course, and I've gone places, but we've streamed often, and we've grown ourselves to where we are now. But where did the YouTube start? Well, if you go and you look at my oldest YouTube video, it was in January of 2022. So we're coming up on 3 years of the YouTube channel. And the reason I did this video was because 6.0, even though it was like 2 years old at that point, it happened in December of 2020, 6.0 was something that needed to be addressed. And I had this ongoing video script just pointing out every flaw with the game, every change that's negative, every bug. But slowly they would fix things and I would take it off the list. And eventually I just decided, instead of doing this large video project, let's focus on individual aspects of it. And I decided the new player experience, how is it? And so we looked at that, then we looked at ranked, then, you know, we saw the Cold War tank being taken out of the tech tree and turned into premium. That still baffles me to this day. Trading missions were added. And you can see the idea of those videos were all discussion topics. They were all discussion pieces. And over time, my thumbnails got better, my speech got better, my scripts got better, my mic quality got better. And so it's been years, and we've worked our way up to this point as well. I was staunchly against doing reviews because I felt there was too many reviewers anyway, and that my word meant nothing at this point because others would say what I want anyway. But after watching others, I was like, well, there's still things I could say and things I could do differently. And so I decided to start doing reviews as well. And ultimately, there's a lot more I want to do with the channel. And I have a lot of creative pieces still being worked on, a lot of discussion videos like those that I started with as well, about the fourth equipment slot, about the Avery, about Cold War, that will be made in due time. But here we are. And it was that month in October where I decided I'm going to review every Halloween tank that I have that really set me onto a dedicated schedule. But ultimately, I'm happy that I did it. And I hope you guys enjoyed those reviews. I hope none of them were rushed, even though in one of them I did mess up the code that I put in there. And there were a few people who did get the code. That was something interesting I wanted to do as well. But I hope you guys are looking forward to my other future projects that I have in the works, because I know right now we're a bit bitter with the game. There are definitely some big things I want to do, and I might get some more people involved in it. Of course, look forward to those. But there is another part of the story that must be discussed, because through all this grinding, right, of two channels now, I'm over grinding on Twitch, and now we've got YouTube. At some point, I had gotten into the community contributor program. If you guys know anything about the community contributor program, it was run by someone different 3 different times in my timeline now, and actually 4. At first, I did not have any communications with the first CM. But then when Minto took over, he seemed like a great guy, and he was. And I desperately tried to get myself in the program, because that's what felt like the next step, After making a name for yourself on Twitch, what feels like the next step other than being recognized by the game as a whole? And I had a lot of people refer me in the program, say, hey, you should add this guy in. Ultimately, I wasn't chosen by Minto, and eventually, with T-Kane in charge, I got in because of my tweet that got put into the game for the "you have no commander assigned, here's a silhouette." Ultimately, they made it smaller than I wanted, and it's not as noticeable. And of course, it's not a perfect solution, but because they were so adamant against the pop-up window that everyone was suggesting, and I thought, well, anything is better than nothing, they said, hit us with another idea. We are not going to do the pop-up, but if you guys have anything else, let us know. And so I made a tweet saying, just put a silhouette. Put a big silhouette of a 3D commander there, and they implemented that into the game, and that helped me to get in the program. And I was in that program for 1.5 years, and then I got removed at the end of last year. And it wasn't for any personal reasons. It wasn't just me. If you guys know about that removal, a lot of people got removed all at once, but that removal stung, because it felt like that's what I had worked for all this time, was getting into the program. And I was so happy to be in the program, and things were changing just as I got kicked. And things were changing seemingly for the better, at least in some aspects, for the worse in some others. And there's a lot that happened with that I could talk about, but I feel like it deserves its own video and can get super negative, that I want this video to be a positive one. So reason I bring up the community contributor program in the first place is because I was in it. If you didn't know that, I was a CC for quite a while, and it was a good time. I was happy with it. We would do seasonal hits with the giveaways they would give us, and there are some videos on here that I got to review because of my rental, and it was great. I really enjoyed being recognized as a community contributor. But I am happy to say that I've still been recognized in-game by the rest of the dev team. And we have those cones on the community maps, and the cones in the customizable garage that I asked for from Nick, and he obliged, and I'm just happy about that stuff. We talked about that stuff in my Thanksgiving video as well, but that's where we came from. We started all the way in Halo Reach, got my name through that game, The friends that I met there got me into World of Tanks, and here we are now, streaming for 5 years, being on YouTube for almost 3, and we're not stopping. Again, the game's in a bad state right now, and it has me questioning why I do play the game, because my principles and morals are being strained by the gambling, and it is sad to see people are defending it, but let's not get into that discussion. I will do my best to provide quality content for you all. There are many projects in the works, all big and little, many discussions to be had, many games to share, and I hope I don't disappoint you guys with them. I again thank you for 1,000 subscribers, and I thank you for watching today's video. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.